The crash of the coffee mug against the reception desk sent ceramic shards skittering across the polished granite surface. Dr. Amarachin steadied herself, her shoulder throbbing where the security guard's grip had been, watching her research portfolio scatter across the floor like fallen leaves. Brandon Walsh towered over her, his supervisor's badge gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights, convinced that his authority made him untouchable. Hospital staff gathered in the sterile corridor. Administrators were summoned. No one bothered to ask questions. To them, she was simply another disruption to be eliminated. But Dr. Amarachin was not someone they could dismiss so easily. She was the architect behind their most lucrative medical research contracts, the mind that had built their reputation without them ever connecting her face to her work. And when she decided to act, she wouldn't merely end careers, she would dismantle the entire foundation they stood upon. The morning fog clung to the windows of Metropolitan General Hospital's research wing, casting a gray pallor over the bustling corridors where doctors and researchers moved with practiced urgency. The air carried the sharp scent of antiseptic mixed with the subtle aroma of fresh coffee from the nearby staff lounge. Beneath the clinical efficiency and pristine white walls, however, there existed an undercurrent of tension, a hierarchy that revealed itself not in written policies, but in the subtle ways staff members interacted. IT showed in the hurried nods, the careful deference, the way certain researchers received immediate attention while others found themselves waiting indefinitely for approval, their credentials somehow never quite sufficient. Dr. Amarachin sensed this atmosphere the moment she stepped off the elevator on the 7th floor, carrying a leather briefcase containing breakthrough research data that would revolutionize their understanding of neurological disorders. Dressed in a crisp white lab coat over professional slacks, her black hair pulled back in a neat bun, she moved with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to presenting groundbreaking findings to Nobel laureates and department heads. The briefcase contained months of painstaking work, clinical trial results that would single-handedly elevate the hospital's research profile and secure millions in federal funding. She approached the reception desk where Brandon Walsh, the research department's administrative supervisor, sat hunched over his computer screen. His nameplate read Senior Research Coordinator, and he barely glanced up when she cleared her throat politely. When he finally looked at her, his gaze swept from her Asian features to her visitor's badge, and something cold settled into his expression. "What do you need?" he asked, the words delivered with the tone of someone already annoyed by the interruption. Doctor Chen smiled professionally, setting her briefcase carefully on the desk. She produced her identification along with a formal appointment confirmation. "I'm here for my scheduled presentation to the research committee. Dr. Chen from the Neurological Institute. Everything should be in your system." Brandon glanced at the ID without reaching for it, his fingers drumming impatiently against his desk. "Yeah, I don't think so. You need to leave." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Other staff members began to notice the exchange, their conversations growing quieter as they sensed tension building. Dr. Chen maintained her composure, though something familiar and bitter stirred within her chest. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding," she said calmly. "My research presentation is scheduled for 2 p.m. with the full committee. All documentation has been submitted weeks in advance." Brandon leaned back in his chair, making no effort to check his computer or verify her claims. "Look, I don't know what kind of scam you're running, but we don't just let random people waltz in here claiming to be doctors. This is a serious medical institution." The accusation struck like a physical blow. Around them, the corridor grew quieter as nurses and residents began to pause, drawn by the unmistakable shift in atmosphere. Dr. Chen could feel their eyes on her, some curious, others uncomfortable, all of them witnesses to her systematic humiliation. "I am Dr. Amarachin," she said, her voice steady but firm. "I hold doctorates from MIT and Johns Hopkins. My research on neural pathway regeneration has been published in 14 peer-reviewed journals. You can verify any of this information with a simple phone call." Brandon stood up abruptly, using his height to loom over her. "You think you can come in here with fake credentials, trying to infiltrate our research department? What are you really after? Industrial espionage? Corporate theft?" The accusations came fast and sharp, each one designed to humiliate and discredit. Dr. Chen felt the familiar weight of assumptions pressing down on her, the same assumptions that had followed her through graduate school, through her postdoctoral work, through every professional achievement that others found easier to question than to acknowledge. "You are making assumptions based on my appearance," she said quietly, her words cutting through his bluster. "You have not verified my credentials. You have not checked your appointment system. You are profiling me instead of doing your job." Brandon's face flushed red with anger. "Don't you dare accuse me of profiling. I'm following security protocol. You're the one trying to cause problems here." The head of hospital security, David Morrison, watched from across the lobby, his attention ostensibly focused on paperwork while his peripheral vision tracked every word of the escalating confrontation. Other department heads maintained their distance, content to observe the drama unfold while positioning themselves to claim ignorance later. Dr. Chen stood her ground, her briefcase still resting on the desk between them like an unspoken testament to her legitimacy. I am here for a legitimate appointment. I have provided proper identification. I am asking you to verify the information before making any further assumptions. Assumptions? Brandon's voice rose sharply. The only assumption here is you thinking you can fool us with this elaborate charade. Security. The guards approached with the mechanical precision of men trained to follow orders without question. Their faces showed no curiosity about the circumstances, no interest in investigating the validity of the complaint. They saw only what they expected to see, a problem to be removed. Ma'am, you need to come with us, one of the guards said, reaching for her arm. Dr. Chen pulled back sharply. I am not going anywhere until someone verifies my appointment. This is a hospital, not a police state. Brandon moved around the desk, his face twisted with righteous anger. You think you can come in here, disrupt our operations, make accusations against our staff? You think anyone's going to believe some troublemaker over a hospital administrator? The words carried the weight of institutional authority, backed by the assumption that his position granted him unquestionable credibility. Around them, the gathered staff watched in uncomfortable silence, none willing to intervene or question the unfolding injustice. You're nothing here, Brandon continued, his voice growing more venomous. Nothing but another fraud trying to scam your way into sensitive research areas. Dr. Chen stepped closer, her voice dropping to a level that somehow commanded more attention than shouting. No, you're the nothing here. A small, frightened man who mistakes prejudice for procedure, who confuses authority with competence. The slap came without warning, sharp and public, echoing off the sterile walls of the corridor. Dr. Chen's head snapped to the side under the impact, her body swaying but not falling, her balance rooted in something deeper than physical strength. A burning pain spread across her cheek, but she didn't raise her hand to touch it, didn't stumble backward or cry out. She straightened slowly, deliberately, and turned her gaze back to Brandon with a clarity that seemed to strip away all his false confidence. The corridor fell into absolute silence, the kind of quiet that follows a thunderclap. Did everyone see that? Brandon shouted suddenly, pointing at her briefcase. She was trying to steal research data. Look at this. He grabbed the briefcase and shook it dramatically. Probably corporate espionage. The security guards, seeing only what their assumptions allowed them to see, moved to restrain Dr. Chen. She didn't resist as they escorted her toward the exit, her steps measured and deliberate. The fire in her cheek was matched only by the steel settling deeper into her resolve. Outside, police cruisers waited with flashing lights. Dr. Chen was processed with the mechanical efficiency of a system that saw her only as another statistic. She was handcuffed, read her rights for charges that existed only in Brandon Walsh's imagination, and transported to the county detention facility where she spent 8 hours in a holding cell, her research breakthrough forgotten in the chaos of false accusations. While Dr. Chen sat in custody, the world moved around her with increasing urgency. At Chen Biomedical Industries, her absence triggered a cascade of concerned calls from research partners and government liaisons. Dr. Sarah Martinez, her chief legal counsel and longtime friend, felt the first stirrings of alarm when repeated calls went unanswered. Within hours, the legal machinery began to turn. Corporate investigators made discreet inquiries about Dr. Chen's whereabouts while simultaneously initiating reviews of all contracts with Metropolitan General Hospital. Financial analysts began calculating the precise cost of severing research partnerships worth over $50 million annually. When Dr. Chen was finally released without charges, the district attorney having found no evidence to support Brandon's accusations, she emerged into the evening air with her dignity intact and her resolve crystallized into something unbreakable. She made 2 phone calls from the courthouse steps, one to her legal team and one to the hospital's board of directors. The next morning, Dr. Chen returned to Metropolitan General Hospital, but this time she wasn't alone. Dr. Martinez accompanied her, along with 2 senior partners from one of the city's most prestigious law firms, each carrying briefcases filled with subpoenas and legal documents. The research wing buzzed with nervous energy as word spread of their arrival. Brandon Walsh sat at his desk, his confidence from the previous day replaced by a growing sense of unease. When Dr. Chen approached his desk, the same desk where her credentials had been dismissed and her dignity assaulted, the corridor fell silent. You, she said, her voice clear and carrying, assaulted me. You slandered me. You had me arrested on false charges. She nodded to Dr. Martinez, who stepped forward and placed a thick envelope on Brandon's desk. This is a federal lawsuit for civil rights violations, assault, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We're also seizing all security footage from yesterday's incident. Brandon looked wildly around for support, but hospital administrator Robert Klein, who had watched the previous day's events unfold, offered no assistance. His own position was now precarious, his failure to intervene transformed from willful blindness into potential liability. And just so there's no confusion about standing, Dr. Martinez continued, you should know that Dr. Chen is the founder and CEO of Chen Biomedical Industries. Until today, her company held research contracts worth more than $50 million with this institution. A collective gasp rippled through the gathered staff. The young residents and nurses whispered among themselves, the truth of the situation finally becoming clear. One brave intern stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper, "Are you really Dr. Chen? The Dr. Chen who developed the neural regeneration protocol?" Dr. Chen turned slightly, her expression softening for the first time since entering the building. "Yes. And before this day ends, every contract, every research partnership, every collaborative agreement between Chen Biomedical and this hospital will be terminated." The financial implications hit the room like a physical force. Department heads began calculating the devastation to their research budgets, their grant applications, their academic standings. Dr. Klein felt his career crumbling in real time as board members would soon demand explanations he couldn't provide. 2 days later, Dr. Chen stood on the hospital steps facing a crowd of reporters and community activists. She wore a simple black blazer, her hair pulled back professionally, the bruise on her cheek visible but not concealed. Behind her, Dr. Martinez and their legal team arranged themselves with quiet authority. "I am Dr. Amara Chen," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the cold morning air. 2 days ago, I came to this hospital to present breakthrough research that could have changed thousands of lives. Instead, I was racially profiled by an administrator who decided that my appearance was more important than my credentials. I was verbally abused, physically assaulted, and arrested on fabricated charges. She paused, allowing the cameras to capture the full weight of her composure. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a procedural error. This was a systematic failure that occurs when institutions allow prejudice to masquerade as policy, when they permit assumptions to substitute for investigation. The crowd stirred with anger, with demands for justice, but Dr. Chen raised her hand and they fell silent. The authority in her gesture was undeniable. "I am not here seeking sympathy," she continued. "I am here to ensure accountability. This hospital will face federal investigation for civil rights violations. The administrators who enabled this behavior will face personal consequences. And the research partnerships that could have saved lives have been permanently severed, not as punishment, but as a natural consequence of an institution that values prejudice over excellence." The aftermath unfolded swiftly and decisively. Brandon Walsh was terminated within hours, his career in hospital administration effectively ended. Security footage, when finally reviewed, showed the unprovoked assault clearly, leading to criminal charges that no amount of institutional protection could shield him from. Dr. Klein submitted his resignation before the board could demand it, his legacy forever tainted by his passive complicity in discrimination. The hospital faced federal oversight, mandatory bias training, and policy reforms that extended far beyond cosmetic changes. In the weeks that followed, Dr. Chen used the settlement negotiations not to extract maximum compensation, but to ensure lasting change. Her demands included comprehensive bias training for all staff, restructured complaint procedures, and accountability measures that would make future discrimination costly for individuals and institutions alike. 6 months later, Dr. Chen sat in her office overlooking the city, the morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. The bruise had long since faded, but the changes she had set in motion continued to ripple outward. Hospital policies had been rewritten, careers had been rebuilt or destroyed based on merit rather than assumptions, and young researchers of all backgrounds found doors opening that had previously been closed. Dr. Martinez knocked softly before entering, carrying updates on the various reform initiatives they were monitoring. "The training programs are showing real results," she reported. "Complaint procedures are being followed. People are being held accountable." Dr. Chen nodded, but her gaze remained focused on the street below, where people moved through their daily lives largely unaware of the battles fought on their behalf. "It's not about the victory," she said quietly. "It's about the foundation. Every person who faces discrimination now has a precedent, a path forward, proof that resistance is possible." She thought about the young intern who had spoken up, who had found her voice when others remained silent. She thought about the researchers who would never face the same barriers she had encountered, the brilliant minds who would be judged on their ideas rather than their appearances. Justice wasn't a single moment, a single lawsuit, a single settlement. It was a long road built one stone at a time, each one placed by hands that refused to be turned away. Dr. Chen would continue building, continue fighting, and no one would ever mistake her silence for surrender again. The city hummed with life below, moving forward into a future slightly more just than its past, changed in ways both small and profound by one woman's refusal to accept the unacceptable. Somewhere in those streets, a young girl walked to school with her head high, unaware of the path that had been cleared for her by someone who had chosen to fight rather than fade away.